Hi everybody, welcome to the Lord of the Reads. So today's video is going to be my first impressions of my March TBR. Super excited about this. When I did my T-Bingo-R game for March, I got all fun books. So, this is going to be extremely fun. I've read the first chapter of all of my books that I picked for March, and I'm going to be giving you my first impressions of that one chapter. So let's get started with the first book. The first book is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I've been wanting to read this one for a while. It's been on my shelf for a very long time. And at the very beginning, the first thing I got, I was definitely not expecting. I got Hunger Game vibes instantly. There were many similarities. First one, the girl takes care of her poor family. She was out hunting in the forest, and with a bow and arrow, which was all similar things for the Hunger Games. Katniss was, in the first chapter, the opening scene, she was out in the forest hunting with her bow and arrow for her poor family. Definitely very similar vibes. Other thing, there's like a higher power in both of these that the poor people fear. In the Hunger Games, it was the capital, like the big power that was suppressing all of them. And in this one, it's the fairy court, the fairy kingdom, and that everyone's afraid of. So very similar aspects in all of that. That was the last thing I was expecting, for this to be similar to the Hunger Games, but it was. And it was very pleasant to read about, because I wasn't expecting that. The other thing, beautiful descriptive writing. Another thing I wasn't expecting. I had heard a lot about the plot and romance and high fantasy, but not really anything about writing. So that was definitely a lot of fun. I was not expecting it, but the writing is beautiful and descriptive and everything that I want in high fantasy. High fantasy is one of my favorite genres to read, and flowery writing, descriptive writing, it's spectacular. Another thing that was really interesting, which also made it similar to the Hunger Games, was the level of hopefulness, yet down-to-earth way that the plot was going. The main character being poor, like she wants all these things and she wants her family to be happy, and while that hopefulness is woven into the story, there's also that down-to-earth, like she's not going to get it anytime soon, and which is really pleasant to read about, because a lot of books you have all this high hope and the character expects it, and when it's not given, it's some big surprise that can be really awkward to read about. But in this, like, having that, like, down-to-earth nature, like, really helps bring that through. So, as far as the first chapter, it's amazing so far. Definitely all that it's been hyped up to be, so I definitely cannot wait to continue. The next book is Siegen Storm by Leigh Bardugo. I don't remember when I read Shadow and Bone. Can't remember. The first book is about a girl, and she lives in this country, and all the people in this country have special powers. They can bend certain elements. Some can bend fire, water, electricity, all kinds of things. And in this country, in order to trade, they have to cross the Fold, and it's a place of darkness where evil things live. And she gets sent there on a trade ship to trade with the other countries. And something happens on the ship, and everyone thinks that she has a special ability that hasn't been seen for a very long time. So this is the second book. Oh, the first book left off on such a cliffhanger, and I wanted to pick this up so bad. Like, I've been waiting to read this based on that cliffhanger alone. Like, I wanted to pick this up. But the start of this, it's hopeful, but still kind of dark. Like, bad things are happening to the characters. as to be expected based on where the first book ended. But, like, bad things are happening to these characters. And the two main characters that we're following have had very different experiences in this first chapter, which is a super interesting thing to read about, because usually when you have a multiple point of view story, you have different... the characters usually aren't in the same situation. However, in the first chapter of this book, the two main characters are in the same situation at the same time, and the point of view just switches. So you get to see, like, in the same situation, there's different ways that they're dealing with it, and the different things that are happening to them, which is really interesting for a multiple point of view series. I don't know if the rest of this book has a multiple point of view, or whether it's just her. But the first chapter had both of them, and that was super interesting to read about the differences and experiences. So, definitely can't wait to get to continue with this one. Especially after the cliffhanger of the first book. Like, I've wanted to pick this up for so long, so now that I finally am, super excited to continue with it. I can't wait. The next book is The Lost Hero by Rick Riordan. I skipped over this series completely when I was reading through... I read Percy Jackson, and then I went straight to Trials of Apollo, and I never read this series, and I don't really know what it's about. The Percy Jackson, you follow the Greek gods and the children of the Greek gods, and here you follow the Roman gods and the children of the Roman gods. But it's the same story. That was one of the things that I loved about Rick Riordan, was you got to see all the different pantheons put together into one world. So you have, like in this instance, you have the Greek pantheon, all the Greek gods, and the Roman gods within the same story and kind of interwoven together. So this follows the Roman gods and the children of the Roman gods specifically, and I don't know what happens. But based on the first chapter, you follow this boy named Jason, and he wakes up on a bus on a field trip, and he doesn't know where he is, and he doesn't know any of the people surrounding him. And that's definitely a difficult thing to write about. Everything that I've ever read about someone who's lost their memory, especially when you're starting off a book with someone who has a lost memory. The beginning of a book is most times where the writer hooks the reader and builds the world. Which means there's a whole lot of description and world building and character building. However, when you have a main character that doesn't know anything about their surroundings, it can be very difficult. I find a character that isn't already established in the world, like someone who's lost their memory, and having them, like, getting all that world building and description from someone who's not already established in the world can get really boring and dry really fast. But what Rick Riordan did, and it's amazing, is he continues through the story regular, like, without adding any world building. So if you picked this up not knowing anything about it and not having read the Percy Jackson series, you wouldn't know anything about the world. Nothing. Nothing about that this is even about the gods. You'd know absolutely nothing. And that's an interesting, concept, is when you have a main character who doesn't remember anything, and you as a reader also don't know anything, and you're both being dragged through the events of the story. It's amazing. Not dry at all as far as a character who's lost his memory. That's one of the reasons that I typically stay away from those types of books, because I find them dry at the beginning and really hard to get through, especially like when you start off with all the world building and description. But I'm so glad that this was done differently, because it's super interesting so far. I'm loving it. I can't wait to continue with this, so I can get through the series and move on to hopefully more of Rick Riordan's books. The next book is City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. I read the first 2 books, City of Bones and City of Ashes. I can't even remember when. It was probably like near November. But I love them, and I don't know why I never picked up this book. I read the first chapter, and right off the bat, it's a super gripping and fast-paced world. That's usually how most books will start out. Especially, like, a book that, if you start off the first book of a series, the beginning's going to be a lot of world building. And when you get to, like, the second and third book, there's going to be less world building and more action to just take you right into the story. And that's what this did. I flew through the first chapter. Like, all the action and everything that happened in the first chapter was amazing. I can't say too much about this book. The first book is about a girl who finds out that there are demons and there are angels and magical creatures, and that there are shadow hunters who have to kill off the demons so that regular people can live in peace. And she finds out that she might be one of them. She doesn't know. And this was super fast-paced, super gripping. And it actually started off not really from the perspective of the main character, but from one of the side characters. He's actually my favorite side character, Simon. And at the end of City of Ashes, the second book in the series, something happened to him, and I can't say what it is. But if you've read it, then you'll know what I'm talking about. I was not expecting it, and I loved it. As far as plot twists go, that was one of my favorites. And seeing the type of person that he was at the beginning of the first book, and how he's changed by, that big plot twist, how his confidence boost and all that in this book, it's really cool to see. Mostly, you'll have in a series at least, you'll have a slow character arc, and you'll see differences from the beginning to end, if you look at it. But in this, there was like a clear moment of change in Simon's life that completely changed the person that he was. And it was, as far as plot twists go, it's one of my favorites. And this is so good so far, and I can't wait to continue because I'm sure that I'm going to love it. The next book is Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. I read The Hunger Games. I can't even remember when. It might have been December. Yeah, I think it was December. And then I read Catching Fire in January. And I loved them both. Hunger Games is a very popular. If you don't know about it, then I don't know where you've been living. But what it is about, in case you do live on Mars, The Hunger Games is about this girl named Katniss, and she volunteers to go fight in the Hunger Games, and so that her sister doesn't have to. The Hunger Games is a game where 2 children from each district, a boy and a girl, have to go to this arena where they fight to the death. So there's 24 children. They go and fight to the death until only one remains, and that's the victor. Very dark concept for a book. But I loved both Hunger Games and Catching Fire. And I was not expecting Catching Fire to go the way that it did. I had no clue. Based on the first book, the second book just completely changed the concept. And it changed the concept at the end of Catching Fire. And I did not know what to think. Because the concept had just did a backflip onto its head. Like, it was completely different. And I loved it. I couldn't wait to get to this book to see what actually happened. It was amazing. This book, however, starts on really bad news. Like, based on what happened at the end of Catching Fire, there were things that happened that would obviously start this book off with bad news. And a little bit of time has passed, or at least the characters now only finding out about things that happened. Oh, and they're really bad. Like, they're really bad. And now even the good things that what the character thought was good before, now even that can't be trusted. It's completely been flopped on its head. And one of the most interesting things about what happened to this book in Catching Fire is that, if you know what I'm talking about, you'd have to have read it to know, because I can't say it, because it would be a complete spoiler. But if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone wants her to hold them together. Like, she needs to keep everyone else from going completely crazy and keep them moving in the right direction. And this book, at the beginning of this book, it really shows, like, how everyone wants her to keep them together, while she is struggling herself to keep herself together. Everyone else wants her to be a leader. They want her to be the symbol. And she's having trouble keeping her own sanity under control. And based on... there was small amounts of that throughout the first two books. Like, you understood that she was, like, struggling in all this. But in this book, you really get, like, a rush of it all at once. Like, she is struggling while everyone else wants her to step up. She is struggling just to keep herself together. And I love this. It's spectacular. So as far as third books in a series go, I'm super excited for this one. Like, I'm super excited. In case you can't tell, I'm very excited. Okay, so the last book, The House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I've rambled about all the other books. I've absolutely rambled. And I have practically nothing to say about this book. This is the type of book where, based on the... you can't form an opinion based on the beginning. I don't know what to say about it. Because not much has happened, but at the same time, everything has happened. Like, the concept for the entire world has been built. The characters have been expressed. Yet I know practically nothing. It's one of those books. Have you ever read a book like that? This is one of those books. In order to formulate an opinion, I think I'd have to read more. I feel like I've been given the whole scope of this world, yet know absolutely nothing. But, I mean, I guess that's a first impression in and of itself. The book's about a guy who has to go to this orphanage to make sure that the magical children there don't have enough power to destroy the world. A very vague description, that's all I know. And based on the first chapter, like, I don't even know if where we've been so far is the main setting of the story. Like, I know nothing. Absolutely nothing. But I kind of like it. Like, for being, you know, magical children and all that, it's super mysterious so far. Like, there's not a lot of information being handed out, yet there's a lot of information being handed out. Do I know how to explain it? No, not at all. Am I enjoying it? Yes. I'm enjoying it very much so. I don't know what else to say. But yes, I will be continuing with this in March. I mean, obviously it was on my March TBR. At this point I'm rambling. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I'll read this book. I'll give you more opinions in my wrap-up. That's all I have to say about this book. I'll continue it and give you more information and more thoughts later, but that's that for this book. So that was the first impressions of my March TBR. I rambled on some books and didn't talk at all about other books. Barely. So it was a roller coaster for me too. It wasn't just you. So with that, I'm gonna end this video before I start rambling even more. Or don't talk about things even more. Yes, I'm ending it here, so I hope you enjoyed whatever that was. And if you did, for some strange reason, enjoy that, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And comment down below what you're thinking of anything that you're currently reading. And with that, I'll see you in my next video. Bye!